The intercepted transmission flickered across the holo displays in the command chamber of the Keval Dominion's primary warship, Korshal Tal. It wasn't encrypted. Humans didn't even bother to hide it. The message contained planetary schematics, resource deposits, and the coordinates of a newly founded colony. A soft hum filled the chamber as the transmission repeated, cutting off just as abruptly as it began. High Marshal Vorak stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the pale blue and green orbs spinning slowly in the center of the holo array. "They barely register as a Tier 2 civilization," one of the sub-commanders growled, his voice curling with disdain. "And yet, they spread like vermin." Vorak's upper mandibles twitched slightly. The humans had always been an anomaly in the galactic stage, fragile-bodied, short-lived, but undeniably persistent. It was easy to ignore their colonies in the outer sectors, until now. The planet rotating in the display wasn't just another settlement, it was Orion 7, a system perilously close to the Dominion's trade routes. And worse, the surface readings showed veins of lervium, a rare mineral critical to the Keval's interstellar fuel. "If we delay, their infestation will spread further into our zone of control," said fleet strategist Varn. His arms were crossed, and his gaze lingered on the holo screen as if the human settlement itself was a personal insult. "Their ships lack proper shielding, and their orbital defenses are rudimentary. The reports from previous encounters suggest they rely on negotiation rather than firepower." Vorak shifted his gaze to Varn. "They survived the Arkan Crusade and the Brakva Scourge. Both times they negotiated peace only after shattering fleets that underestimated them." A ripple of quiet discomfort spread among the assembled officers. The Arkan and Brakva were not easily defeated, but Vorak knew better than to allow caution to cloud the Council's decision. This wasn't about conquest. It was about crushing a pest before it festered. Vorak stepped forward, standing at the edge of the display. "Order the mobilization of the Fourth Fleet. We will deploy immediately." A murmur of approval echoed through the room, and officers began tapping out commands. Ships detached from their docking holds like silent predators stirred from slumber. As the command staff dispersed, Varn approached quietly. "Do you expect resistance?" Vorak's mandibles twitched again. "I expect surrender, if they are wise." The darkness of hyperspace fractured as the Keval fleet emerged on the edge of Orion 7. The planet hung like a forgotten gem, faintly glowing beneath the light of its parent star. Sensor sweeps immediately bathed the surface, revealing outposts, mining facilities, and thin latticework defenses spread across the northern hemisphere. The data pulsed across the bridge of the Korshal Tal. Varn scanned the readings, his eyes narrowing. No planetary shield grid, no orbital platforms. They barely have atmospheric interceptors. Vorak's claws traced the edge of his command chair, thoughtful. They built quietly, undetected by our long-range scouts. "That takes some level of discipline." Varn snorted. "Desperation, not discipline. Their reach exceeds their grasp. They don't even seem to have realized we intercepted their transmission." The comms officer turned from his post. "High Marshal, they are hailing us." Vorak exhaled sharply. "Put it through." The holo image flickered to life, displaying a human standing in what appeared to be a command center hastily repurposed from civilian structures. The man was middle-aged, face stern, but calm. His uniform bore no rank, though his posture suggested authority. "I am Governor Tyson Hale of the Orion 7 Colonial Initiative. This is human-controlled space. State your intentions." Varn's mandibles clicked together in amusement. "They attempt diplomacy. How quaint." Vorak leaned forward. "Governor Hale, your colony exists within striking distance of Dominion territories. Your presence is a violation of interstellar accords. Your population and facilities will submit to immediate annexation. Resistance will not be tolerated." The human nodded thoughtfully, as if weighing the offer. "We are prepared to negotiate terms." A low, guttural chuckle spread across the bridge. Vorak's eyes narrowed. "There are no terms, Governor. You will surrender your colony and relinquish all mining operations to Dominion control. If you resist, we will reduce your settlements to dust. The transmission crackled slightly, static cutting through the image. Hale's face flickered but remained calm. Understood. Please, stand by. The line cut. Varn let out a short, humorless laugh. Is that all? They fold at the first threat? I expected at least some pretense of defiance. Vorak's gaze lingered on the planet below. Something about the exchange gnawed at him. Too calm, too cooperative. Deploy the ground units, Vorak ordered finally, and execute reconnaissance flights over all known installations. If they surrender, we will make it swift. If not... He let the unspoken threat hang. Across the void, the first wave of Dominion dropships began their descent, slicing through the upper atmosphere like falling blades. The wind continued to scrape faint trails of dust across the colony's outer structures as Dominion troops spread through the silent streets. Varn stood near the center of the landing zone, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the prefabricated structures met the jagged hills beyond. The colony looked intact, operational even, but not a single soul stirred. The stillness felt heavier than expected. Vorak advanced from the lead dropship, his silhouette cutting a stark figure against the rusty sky. He stepped lightly, as though the ground itself might give underfoot. His eyes never left the landscape. The planet's atmosphere pressed against his senses, and the quiet gnawed at the edges of his instinct. Expand the search grid, Varn. Vorak ordered, his voice even but sharp. There's no logic to this absence. Varn signaled to the scattered units. Teams 1 and 2 sweep the upper perimeter. Teams 3 and 4 secure the refinery and all storage yards. Anyone, armed or unarmed, should be treated as hostile. Troopers began to move with increased precision, falling into practiced formations as they fanned out in silent clusters. Each turn of the corner, each sweep of an empty corridor added weight to the unease thickening the air. Varn broke the silence. These colonies are usually teeming with workers, miners, technicians, even families at times. Where would they go? Vorak paced forward, trailing his claw along the exterior wall of a nearby structure. They didn't leave. They're watching. On the outskirts, a cluster of humans appeared, unarmed, moving in slow procession toward the incoming patrols. Their eyes were downcast, expressions carefully blank. A man, likely a diplomat or spokesperson, stepped forward from the group, lifting his hands as if to greet the Dominion forces. Without hesitation, Varn raised his weapon. 3 shots rang out. The diplomat crumpled, lifeless, onto the dust-covered ground. The other humans halted, unmoving, showing neither fear nor anger. Varn turned to his troops. Let that be a lesson to the rest. Keep moving. Vorak watched the bodies being dragged away by Dominion soldiers without comment. They expected that, he murmured. Proceed with the sweeps. He gestured toward a comm relay partially obscured by a mining rig. The lens of a surveillance drone peeked just around the corner, motionless yet intact. Cut the drone feeds, Vorak commanded. If they think we're blind, they might overplay their hand.
A comms officer moved to execute the order, but before his hand could reach the panel, a burst of static hissed through the airwaves. The Dominion's channels crackled to life. Dominion vessels, this is Orion 7, a voice droned. It was calm. Too calm. Cease planetary operations and withdraw immediately. Varn stiffened. The transmission was human, but the tone carried no fear. It wasn't a plea or a negotiation. It was a directive. Vorak's eyes narrowed. Trace the signal, now.
Sir, it's bouncing off multiple relay points. It's impossible to pinpoint the origin. Amplify the sweeps. I want every corner of this planet mapped. As Dominion scouts combed through the settlement's industrial sector, subtle anomalies began to surface. Surveillance drones inactive yet positioned toward critical entry points. Automated turrets that hadn't been deployed but sat pre-assembled, their barrels just shy of operational. A network of cameras, angled strangely away from major paths, their viewports directed into empty corners. To any lesser strategist, the inconsistencies might seem like neglect. Vorak knew better. They want us to ignore this. Press forward. Vorak entered a large foundry, his footsteps echoing along the steel catwalks. Machines still hummed faintly, powered by backup generators that should have long been depleted. He pressed a claw against a console. The system flickered to life, displaying graphs and operational logs from hours earlier. Recent activity. Someone had been here. Vaughn's voice cracked through the comm. "Sir, one of the scouting parties found something near the southern plateau. You'll want to see this." Vorak descended from the foundry and crossed the uneven terrain with quick, purposeful strides. When he reached the plateau, his eyes narrowed at the sight below. Rows of civilian transport vehicles sat neatly arranged across the clearing, engines cold and hatches closed. A soft breeze whistled through the rows, the emptiness giving the impression they had been parked just moments ago. "They didn't evacuate," Vorak murmured, stepping closer to inspect the lead vehicle. The cargo holds were stocked with supplies. Strange. Supplies are untouched. Varn crouched near a nearby crate, prying open the lid to reveal rations stacked to the top. This isn't panic. It's calculated. They were ready for occupation, not battle. That would explain the lack of direct resistance, Vorak muttered. Suddenly, the faint hum of engines drifted through the air. A Dominion dropship, still circling overhead, sputtered slightly before veering off course. Control chatter erupted in the comms as the pilot fought to stabilize the descent. Static overtook the channel, and then silence. The dropship spiraled lower and lower, crashing into the rocky expanse just beyond the hills. A plume of smoke twisted into the sky. Vorak's claws tightened around the handle of his sidearm. "Maintain formation. I want those transport vehicles checked and secured." Varn relayed the order without hesitation. Across the settlement, Dominion forces began converging back toward the landing zone, abandoning their searches as the weight of unseen eyes crept closer. "Governor Hale, you're more prepared than I expected." The Dominion troops advanced deeper into the colony, the crunch of boots against gravel, the only sound that filled the empty streets. The rows of unmanned vehicles sat like silent sentinels, watching as the alien forces fanned out. Vorak's gaze lingered on the transports for a long moment before he stepped forward, mandibles twitching as if tasting the air for unseen threats. "Push forward. I want this entire colony mapped by dusk," Vorak ordered, his voice slicing through the stillness. Varn nodded, signaling the battalions to spread out. Dominion soldiers swept methodically through the outer sectors, entering warehouses, storage yards, and half-finished mining facilities. Every corner revealed the same unsettling detail: no bodies, no signs of struggle. Everything was meticulously organized, as if the colonists had calmly vacated only moments before the Dominion arrived. "Sir," one of the squad leaders reported over the comms, "we found more supply caches, untouched. Food rations, medical gear, even weapons, but no personnel." Vorak narrowed his eyes, talons scraping the metal casing of his sidearm. "Leave nothing behind. Mark each cache for collection. If they won't defend their resources, we'll strip this place clean." He moved further into the colony, his steps measured as he approached the primary administrative building. The large structure loomed at the heart of the settlement, its steel and concrete walls scarred by weather, but otherwise intact. Dominion soldiers filed through its entrance, weapons drawn, but inside, the rooms mirrored the rest of the colony, abandoned, yet perfectly in order. Varn joined Vorak, scanning the barren office space. "This isn't panic. This is intentional." Vorak grunted. "It doesn't matter. Whatever they're planning, they've already given up this ground." As if to punctuate his words, the lights overhead flickered. A low hum followed, barely audible, but present. Varn's eyes narrowed. That didn't come from us. Before Vorak could respond, the comms crackled with interference. Static washed over the channel, cutting in and out with faint echoes of voices, though no coherent words formed. "Trace the source," Vorak commanded. "It's planetary," the comms officer replied. "Localized, but shifting frequencies. It's not targeting our systems directly. Vorak's mandibles clicked softly. They are testing us. Let them. On the fringes of the colony, Dominion forces began to report movement. Small, darting shapes that hovered at the edge of their vision, disappearing behind buildings and into alleyways before any direct engagement could occur. Drones, Varn growled. They're watching. Vorak stepped out onto the street, scanning the perimeter. A faint glint caught his eye atop a ridgeline overlooking the colony. A small, barely visible reconnaissance drone hovered against the horizon, unmoving. Vorak raised his weapon but lowered it after a pause. Let them observe. Their patience will cost them. The troops pressed on, pushing toward the colony's industrial zone. As they advanced, the first signs of resistance emerged, not in the form of soldiers or defenses, but in the terrain itself. Roads that had seemed stable suddenly cracked beneath heavy vehicles. Dominion troop carriers ground to a halt as rubble collapsed into their path. Several bridges connecting key sectors of the colony detonated in synchronized bursts, sending debris scattering across pathways. Sabotage, Varn hissed. They planned for this. Vorak's expression darkened, but his tone remained cold. Proceed on foot. Distribute squads to flank and circumvent the obstacles. This won't stop us. As the Dominion forces adjusted their approach, a sudden blast erupted from one of the rear patrols. An armored transport flipped onto its side, engulfed in flames. The accompanying soldiers scrambled for cover, weapons raised, but no enemy revealed itself. "Report!" Vorak barked. "Explosives buried beneath the roadway, sir," the squad leader responded. "Concealed charges, minimal yield, just enough to cripple vehicles." Vorak's eyes narrowed. "They're not trying to destroy us outright. They're bleeding us." Across the colony, these attacks escalated. Ambushes sprung from the ruins, striking at isolated squads before vanishing into the labyrinth of mining tunnels and administrative buildings. Sniper fire from concealed vantage points pinned down Dominion forces attempting to regroup. Drones, previously dormant, reactivated sporadically to harass troops with precision strikes before disappearing once more. Vorak stalked through the colony, issuing orders with the calm precision of a predator undeterred by prey's resistance. "Regroup and fortify all captured positions. They want us to spread thin. Don't give them that advantage. Hold the supply depots and refineries. We will draw them out." As twilight descended, the colony shifted around them. The hum that had echoed through the buildings earlier grew louder, resonating from the ground itself. Vorak's eyes narrowed as he placed his palm against the nearest wall. It vibrated faintly beneath his touch. "You've left your mark, Governor. But you're running out of moves." Vorak's words lingered in the stale air as he lowered his hand from the vibrating wall. The hum beneath the colony grew stronger, subtly pulsing as if the planet itself was stirring. Dominion forces continued pressing inward, though the weight of unseen eyes seemed to grow heavier with each step. The industrial zone lay ahead, a tangled web of pipes, silos, and towering cranes, silhouetted against the deepening twilight. Varn strode up beside Vorak, his gaze fixed on the shifting shadows along the rooftops. "I don't like this," he muttered. "They're guiding us. We're not taking this ground. We're being allowed to move through it." Vorak's mandibles clicked softly in irritation. Guided or not, this planet will belong to the Dominion by dawn. Whatever they're waiting for, we'll break it apart before it comes. Varn grunted but said nothing more. He signaled the forward battalions, who advanced cautiously through the narrow corridors of the colony's industrial heart. The air grew thicker, electric with the tension of an enemy that refused to show itself. As Dominion troops spread into formation, the first disruption struck. A supply depot erupted in a flash of light, engulfing 2 armored carriers in molten debris. Soldiers scrambled for cover as shrapnel showered the area. The comms flared to life with scattered reports, detonations along critical junctions, collapsing walkways, and automated machinery springing to life in unexpected bursts of movement. Sabotage across the perimeter, Varn barked into the channel. Tighten formation. Keep comms open. Vorak's eyes narrowed as he scanned the chaos. From his vantage point, the detonations weren't random. They were precise, severing routes of escape and cutting down lines of supply. The humans weren't engaging in open combat. They were dismantling the invasion piece by piece. A low rumble rolled beneath their feet, followed by a sudden shift in the terrain. Metallic groans echoed through the ground as massive steel plates slid aside, revealing deep bunker-lined shafts hidden beneath the surface. "Bunkers," Varn growled. "They've been waiting for us to reach this point." The first shots rang out. From the shadowy recesses of the bunkers, turret emplacements emerged, belching fire across the open zones. Dominion forces scattered, returning fire, but the humans held the high ground, literally rising from beneath the colony itself. "Pull back," Vorak ordered. "Establish defensive lines along the silos. They want us caught in the open. Deny them that advantage." But the ground betrayed them further. Sections of road caved, swallowing transports whole as magnetic pulses erupted from concealed nodes beneath the streets. Dominion soldiers who attempted to retreat found themselves cut off by walls of flame and debris. The humans hadn't built this colony as a home. They had constructed it as a trap. "Hi, Marshal. We're losing ground. They're forcing us into bottlenecks," Varn called out, his weapon sizzling as he downed a drone circling overhead. "We need air support." Vorak keyed into the command channel. "Deploy air cover and reposition to higher ground. Use the refinery towers as fallback points. If they want a siege, we'll give them one." Above them, Dominion gunships descended, unleashing torrents of plasma fire into the bunker apertures. Explosions rippled across the colony as human forces responded with shoulder-mounted launchers, forcing the gunships to veer and circle. In the distance, Vorak spotted movement. A convoy of human vehicles emerging from underground tunnels, racing to reinforce the bunkers. Vorak's mandibles twitched as he marked their position on his visor. "Target those transports. Cut off their reinforcements." Dominion artillery recalibrated, unleashing a barrage toward the advancing convoy. Explosions blossomed along the convoy's path, scattering debris across the landscape. Yet, as the smoke cleared, several of the human transports broke through, diving back underground to evade further fire. "Persistent," Vorak muttered, "but not enough. Keep pressing." Despite his confidence, Vorak could feel the shift in momentum. The colony had transformed from an empty settlement into a battlefield layered with deadly traps and hidden forces. The humans weren't fighting for survival. They were leading the Dominion deeper, controlling the tempo of every engagement. Varn glanced at Vorak. "They're bleeding us dry, inch by inch. If we stay here much longer, they'll cut the fleet off entirely." Vorak stared at the horizon, where the colony's towering structures cast jagged shadows across the battlefield. The hum beneath his feet returned, stronger than before, vibrating with the steady rhythm of something enormous, awakening beneath the surface. "This isn't over," Vorak said, his tone colder than the night air settling over the colony. "But they've made their move. Now, we make ours." As if answering his words, the largest silo in the industrial zone groaned open, and from it rose a massive artillery emplacement, one not seen on any of the Dominion's initial scans. Its barrel locked onto the sky, rotating slowly toward the Dominion fleet lingering in low orbit. Vorak's mandibles curled in recognition of what was to come. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Tell them to brace for counterfire." The first sign that the trap extended beyond the surface came through the comms. Static, faint at first, then layered with distorted echoes of Dominion transmission codes. "Hi, Marshal. Orbital support reports communication anomalies," Varn said, stepping up beside him. His posture was tense, his energy staff humming faintly at his side, ready to activate. "They're unable to establish a clear targeting lock." Vorak's gaze didn't shift. He stood at the edge of the forward command outpost, eyes scanning the darkened skyline. He could feel the weight pressing down on them, not just from the bunkers or the artillery emplacement now silhouetted against the horizon, but from above. The sky itself felt heavier. It's not just interference, it's deliberate. They're sealing us in. Before Varn could respond, a ripple shimmered across the atmosphere. A thin, translucent barrier flickered to life, tracing the planet's uppermost layer. Above, the stars flickered unnaturally. They looked distorted behind it, bending as if seen through warped glass. Containment field, Vorak growled. They planned for this. A sharp crackle cut through the comms as one of the Dominion corvettes attempted to break atmosphere. From the ground, its engines flared brightly, but as it began to ascend, the vessel slowed unnaturally, as if dragged backward by unseen chains. Plasma bursts from planetary defenses lanced through the air, striking the ship before it could retreat. The corvette exploded in a flash of light. "Ground defense is active. They're targeting anything that tries to escape the atmosphere," a voice barked over the channel. More ships attempted liftoff, but the containment field forced their ascent into agonizingly slow climbs. Each became a beacon for ground-based artillery, struck down one by one. Varn grimaced. "They're grounding us. We can't get reinforcements down here." Vorak's mandibles clicked in agitation. "No, but we can't leave either." The humans were closing the trap, piece by piece. "Signal the fleet. Tell them to hold their position above the field and prepare bombardments," Vorak ordered. "If they can't land, they can burn this colony from orbit." A sudden burst of static interrupted the comms again. Vorak's eyes narrowed. "That's not interference, it's suppression. They're targeting the fleet's signals." Vorak gestured for Varn to follow as they moved toward the command post's reinforced barricades. "They don't want us to escape, but they aren't rushing to destroy us." Dominion soldiers scanned the perimeter nervously. On the ridges surrounding the colony, faint glints of metal reflected the moonlight. Drones. Watching. "They'll wait until we panic," Vorak said quietly. "They're trying to bleed us." As if to confirm his words, a transport along the outer perimeter erupted in flame. The detonation was surgical, targeting the fuel cells, igniting the vehicle from within. The surviving soldiers scrambled, weapons drawn, but no enemy emerged. Varn crouched behind cover, scanning the horizon. "Snipers." Vorak lifted his visor and marked the coordinates. "Return fire, but stay low. They want us to waste resources chasing ghosts." More transports detonated as the attacks escalated. Drones dipped low to release payloads of incendiary explosives, retreating before Dominion forces could retaliate. Every time the Dominion pushed forward, the humans melted away into the ruins. "We need to move," Vorak said at last, eyes narrowing at the glint of additional artillery platforms rising in the distance. "If we stay pinned, they'll dismantle us piece by piece, shift to mobile formations, and redistribute ammunition to squads. Keep the convoys dispersed." Varn relayed the orders, his tone sharp and efficient. Dominion forces abandoned stationary positions, adopting smaller, roving strike groups. The humans weren't launching full-scale assaults. They were harassing, stalling, draining. As Dominion patrols adjusted their tactics, Vorak turned his attention back to the containment field. Another corvette attempted ascent, lifting just high enough to graze the barrier before it was torn apart by anti-air fire. Vorak exhaled slowly. They anticipated us. Every route we take leads closer to their kill zones. "So what now?" Varn asked, wiping soot from his visor. "We can't breach the field without triggering more defenses." Vorak's mandibles twitched thoughtfully. "They believe the sky belongs to them. That's their mistake." Varn frowned. "Sir, we take the ground from beneath them. Deploy subterranean drills. If we can't go up, we go down. If the planet is their weapon, we'll turn it against them." Varn's expression hardened, and he nodded. "I'll oversee the operation personally." As Varn departed, Vorak glanced one last time at the flickering containment field above. The humans had prepared their trap well, but Vorak knew that containment only worked if the prey accepted the cage. He had no intention of dying on this rock. "Let them think they have the upper hand," Vorak muttered under his breath. "For now." The air grew colder as night fell over the colony, the sky above still distorted by the flickering containment field. Vorak paced near the command outpost, his eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, smoke curled from the wreckage of Dominion corvettes brought down during failed escape attempts. The humans weren't just holding ground, they were tightening the noose. Varn returned from the subterranean drill site, his expression grim. The tunnels are operational, but we're encountering blockages. They knew we'd try to dig. Vorak's mandibles twitched in irritation. They've anticipated every move. A low hum cut through the stillness. Drones. They circled just beyond the reach of Dominion weapons, flickering in and out of the shadows like carrion birds. Each pass felt closer, more deliberate. Vorak watched as Dominion soldiers tracked them with uneasy eyes, but no orders were given to fire. Wasting ammunition on ghosts was exactly what the humans wanted. "Maintain formations," Vorak ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. "They're waiting for us to break. Don't give them the satisfaction." As he spoke, another explosion rattled the perimeter. This time, a supply convoy erupted in flame near the industrial district. Varn cursed under his breath. That was our last fuel transport to the forward lines. Vorak exhaled slowly. The humans weren't interested in direct engagement. They were dismantling the invasion, piece by piece. "How long until the orbital fleet can recalibrate their systems?" Vorak asked. Varn's expression darkened. "We lost contact with 2 frigates an hour ago. If the suppression field continues, they may never regain full operational status." Vorak's claws tapped rhythmically against his belt. "Then we hold. The longer we survive, the more desperate they become." But even as he said it, Vorak wasn't certain. The humans weren't acting desperate. Every strike, every ambush was calculated. They weren't rushing to finish the fight. They were drawing it out. A patrol returned from the southern ridge, dragging with them the remains of a Dominion scout drone. Its casing was scorched, wires severed. One of the soldiers handed it to Varn, who inspected it briefly before his eyes narrowed. "High Marshal, this drone wasn't shot down." Vorak stepped closer. "Explain." Varn turned the drone, exposing a small, clean puncture through its center core. This was precision work, sabotage. Someone took this apart carefully, then left it to be found. A chill settled over Vorak's thoughts. They're sending a message. They know our patterns better than we realized. As if on cue, the comms crackled to life with an unfamiliar voice. "High Marshal Vorak." Vorak's eyes narrowed. He gestured for silence across the command post. "Identify yourself." The voice on the other end was calm, unhurried. "I already have. You're surrounded, Vorak. Your fleet burns above you, your supplies dwindle, and your soldiers grow restless. How long will you let them bleed for nothing?" Vorak's grip tightened on the console. "Governor Hale." A faint chuckle echoed through the comms. "I told you, we were prepared for you." Varn stepped forward, his voice low. "It's a bluff. They're trying to break morale." Vorak's gaze didn't waver. "Perhaps. But we've underestimated them at every turn." The comms cut out abruptly, leaving the Dominion command in silence. Vorak straightened, mandibles twitching as he addressed the gathered officers. "Let them speak. Let them taunt. It doesn't matter. This planet will belong to the Dominion before the next cycle ends." Yet even as he spoke, Vorak felt the weight of doubt pressing down like the sky itself. As dawn crept over the horizon, Vorak stood at the edge of the command post, staring out over the colony. The containment field flickered faintly in the upper atmosphere, a constant reminder of the trap tightening around them. Smoke rose in thin columns from smoldering wreckage scattered across the landscape, remnants of corvettes and transport ships that had failed in their attempts to breach the blockade. Behind him, Varn approached silently. The weight in his footsteps betrayed the mood spreading through the Dominion ranks. "High Marshal, the remaining forces are requesting direction. Some believe we should attempt contact." Vorak's mandibles twitched in irritation. They want to negotiate. Varn hesitated, his gaze fixed on the ground. Morale is breaking. Supplies are dwindling faster than expected. If we hold any longer, they may begin surrendering without orders. Vorak exhaled sharply, turning his eyes to the fleet fragments burning like stars above them. Every attempt to force a breakthrough had ended the same way, reduced to wreckage by human firepower, their remains left to rot in the colony's unforgiving silence. "Open a channel," Vorak said at last, his voice cold. "To Governor Hale." The communications officer nodded, and within seconds, the channel cracked open with faint static. Then, that calm, unhurried voice returned. "Hi, Marshal Vorak," Hale greeted, as though he had been expecting the call. Vorak's grip tightened behind his back. "Governor Hale, I propose terms of withdrawal." A brief silence followed before Hale replied. "Terms? I think you misunderstand the situation, High Marshal. You are not in a position to propose anything." Varn shifted uncomfortably, but Vorak didn't react. "Your forces have fought well, Governor. I acknowledge your victory on this ground, but war is unpredictable. Grant us safe passage, and this war does not have to extend beyond Orion 7. Another pause, then Hale's voice returned, firmer this time. "Safe passage? You invaded our territory. Your warships still linger above our colonies. The only passage I offer leads directly to your surrender." Vorak's mandibles clicked softly. "There will be no surrender. Then you have no passage." Hale's tone was even, but the weight behind his words felt absolute. "Your forces will remain where they are, subjected to the same conditions you imposed on countless colonies before this one. And you will wait until your fleets are nothing but ghosts in our sky." The comms went dead, leaving Vorak staring at his own reflection in the darkened display. Varn's voice broke the silence. "He's not negotiating." "No, he isn't." Vorak turned sharply, striding away from the communications post. "They want us broken. If we cannot force them to negotiate, then we bleed them until they reconsider." Varn followed closely, but his tone betrayed his doubt. "Sir, if we continue like this, we'll run out of supplies before they do. Then we find another way. Deploy the remaining drones for reconnaissance. Identify weak points in their perimeter." As orders rippled through the remaining Dominion forces, Vorak's eyes fixed once more on the colony. The battlefield had shifted beneath their feet, but the war wasn't over yet. Hours passed, and the perimeter patrols returned with reports that only deepened the tension. Supply caches destroyed during the night. Ammunition stockpiles gone. Medical stations sabotaged. The humans weren't letting up. Even as negotiations stalled, they pressed forward with surgical precision, dismantling what little stability the Dominion forces had left. Varn approached Vorak once more, voice low. "High Marshal, some of the men are beginning to speak of withdrawal, even without clearance. We intercepted communications between lower battalion leaders discussing escape through the tunnels. If this spreads..." Vorak cut him off with a glare. "There will be no retreat. Those caught deserting will face execution. This is not over." Even as he said it, the hum of distant drones echoed over the ridgelines, circling like vultures. Vorak could feel the eyes of the humans watching, waiting for the inevitable fracture in their lines. Governor Hale wasn't rushing. He knew the Dominion forces were at their limit, and he was prepared to wait for them to break under their own weight. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the Dominion encampment. Soldiers huddled in small clusters, their weapons held loosely at their sides. The sharp discipline that once defined them had eroded beneath the weight of constant skirmishes and the ever-present hum of drones circling overhead. Each day, fewer transports returned from supply runs, and the wreckage scattered across the perimeter told a grim tale of failed escapes. Vorak stood in silence, overlooking the remains of his dwindling forces. The wind carried the scent of charred metal and desperation. Behind him, Varn approached, his expression tight with frustration. "High Marshal, we've intercepted more communications. Lower-ranking officers are discussing abandoning their posts. Some battalions are already preparing for unauthorized retreat." Vorak's mandibles twitched. "And the patrols?" Varn hesitated. 3 squads vanished near the tunnel systems. Scouts found remnants of their vehicles, but no survivors. Vorak's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. The humans won't let them leave. Varn's voice lowered, edged with exhaustion. "Morale is crumbling. If we wait any longer, this will spiral out of control. We've lost more to desertion than combat in the past 2 days." Vorak turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Open a channel to Hale." The comms officer complied, and within moments, the static gave way to Hale's voice, calm, patient, and as unyielding as ever. "High Marshal Vorak," Hale greeted. "Is this the call where you finally surrender?" Vorak's mandibles tightened. "I requested terms for withdrawal." Hale's response came without hesitation. "Withdrawal is not an option. The only terms are unconditional surrender. You know this." Vorak's fists clenched behind his back. "You leave me little choice." "That is the point, High Marshal." The comms fell silent, but Vorak's grip on the console did not ease. Varn stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "He won't budge. What now?" Vorak's eyes lingered on the sky, where faint glimmers of Dominion ships still flickered through the containment field. "Now we hold, and we wait for the next move." The next move came that night. Reports streamed in of deserters attempting to flee under the cover of darkness. Anti-air fire lit the sky as human patrols picked off fleeing transports, leaving burning wrecks scattered across the valley. The few ships that managed to breach the atmosphere were pursued by human fighters, driven out of the system entirely. Vorak paced along the outer perimeter of the encampment as Dominion soldiers gathered near the flickering barriers, watching in silence as their comrades fell one by one. The realization sank in. There was no escape. Varn joined him by the barricades, his voice hushed. "If this continues, there will be no one left to command." Vorak didn't respond immediately. His gaze swept across the battlefield, taking in the broken remnants of vehicles and the hollow eyes of the soldiers who remained. The weight of inevitability pressed down on him. "Hold the line," Vorak said softly, "until there's nothing left to hold." The sun dipped further below the horizon, casting the last rays of daylight over the battered Dominion encampment. Fires smoldered in the wreckage left behind by deserters who had been shot down the night before, their transports reduced to twisted, blackened husks scattered across the valley. The flickering embers painted jagged shadows across the barren landscape, each one a reminder of how far the mighty Dominion forces had fallen. Vorak stood near the perimeter, eyes fixed on the distant hills where human patrols now moved openly, no longer bothering to conceal their presence. They moved with the confidence of victors, steadily claiming the ground that had once belonged to his forces. The air carried a biting chill, but Vorak barely registered it. His thoughts drifted to the countless soldiers who had trusted him to lead them to victory, only to find themselves stranded on hostile ground with no hope of reinforcement. Varn approached quietly, his posture stiff but subdued. "High Marshal, the outer trenches have been abandoned. The remaining soldiers are consolidating near the core of the encampment." Vorak's gaze didn't shift. "How many remain?" Varn hesitated, his mandibles twitching. "Less than half, sir, and most of them are exhausted, low on rations. Some haven't slept in days." Vorak exhaled, the weight of inevitability pressing down on him like the cold night air. The hum of drones lingered faintly above, a constant reminder that the humans watched every movement his soldiers made. He could feel the eyes of his men from the shadows, watching him, waiting for a decision he was no longer certain he could delay. "Open the channel again," Vorak said finally. Varn didn't move immediately. "High Marshal, are you certain?" Vorak's tone hardened. "Open it." The comms officer worked swiftly, and the line crackled to life. Moments later, Hale's voice filled the command post once more. "Hi, Marshal Vorak." Hale's voice carried that same unshaken calm. "I was wondering if we'd hear from you tonight." Vorak stepped forward, his claws tightening behind his back. "You've made your point, Governor. My forces cannot hold much longer." "I know," Hale replied simply. "The terms remain unchanged." Vorak's eyes flicked to the dwindling forces around him. He could see Varn standing quietly by the comms console, his posture mirroring the unspoken resignation shared by the others in the room. The silence in the command post felt heavy, as if the collective breath of his officers hung in the air, waiting for him to deny the inevitable. Vorak's mandibles tightened as his eyes lingered on the worn faces of the soldiers who still stood by him. Each one carried the weight of too many lost battles. "I accept your terms," Vorak said, the words bitter on his tongue. He had never imagined uttering them, but now they felt unavoidable. There was a pause on the other end, as if Hale was waiting for more. When Vorak said nothing else, Hale's response was short. "Acknowledged. A human escort will arrive at dawn to supervise your withdrawal. Any deviation from the established route will be met with immediate force." The comms cut out, leaving nothing but the faint hum of the containment field overhead. The soft crackling of flames from the wreckage beyond the barricades filled the void, offering little comfort to those who remained. Varn lowered his head slightly. "It's done." Vorak stepped away from the console, walking toward the edge of the command post. He stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the valley below, as the human patrols continued their methodical sweep across the Dominion's former perimeter. Each movement of their forces felt like a hammer driving the final nails into the coffin of his campaign. "Order the men to stand down," Vorak said quietly. "We leave at first light." Varn hesitated. "Sir." "And those who resist?" Vorak's gaze hardened, though the exhaustion was clear in his voice. "There will be no resistance. Ensure they understand." Behind him, the flickering glow of the remaining Dominion transports seemed small against the vastness of the human-controlled sky. The distant stars shimmered faintly through the haze of the containment field, though Vorak knew none of them offered the escape his soldiers once dreamed of. As the cold settled over the encampment, Vorak remained by the perimeter, watching as the lights of the human forces moved ever closer, methodically erasing the last vestiges of Dominion control over Orion 7. The pale light of dawn crept over the valley as the first Dominion transport stirred to life. Engines rumbled quietly in the cold morning air, and faint plumes of smoke drifted upward as soldiers filed toward the evacuation points. There were no spoken orders beyond the essentials. No shouts or hurried commands, only the silent machinery of a broken army preparing to depart. Vorak stood near the central platform, his silhouette dark against the fading embers of the encampment. His eyes followed the line of soldiers, their movements sluggish but steady. What few supplies remained were loaded onto transports with mechanical precision, as if ritual alone could preserve some shred of their dignity. On the far ridge, human patrols observed in silence, their arms slung but ever present. Hale's forces hadn't interfered, but Vorak felt their gaze pressing down like the weight of the sky itself. Varn approached from the side, his face lined with fatigue. "The last of the outer platoons are boarding, High Marshal. The escort will arrive within the hour." Vorak gave a slight nod but said nothing. His attention remained fixed on the horizon, where the flickering containment field still loomed above them, like a reminder of their confinement. The field would remain in place until the last Dominion vessel cleared the atmosphere. "And the equipment we couldn't recover?" Vorak asked quietly. "Scuttled," Varn replied. "Anything operational was destroyed as ordered." Vorak's gaze shifted to the southern ridgeline, where wreckage from failed escape attempts lay scattered. Twisted metal gleamed faintly under the rising sun. Even now, the human patrols avoided those sites, as if to let the Dominion forces linger in the shadow of their failure a little longer. A low hum drifted through the air as the first escort craft broke through the haze, descending toward the landing zone. The angular silhouette of the human vessels cut a stark contrast against the soft morning sky, their weapons visibly powered down but unmistakably present. Varn straightened beside Vorak. "They're here." Vorak's mandibles clicked softly, but he offered no response. As the human ships touched down, their ramps extended with a deliberate slowness, and armored personnel emerged, forming loose formations along the perimeter. They weren't needed. The Dominion forces had no will to fight. Hale's voice crackled over the comms. "High Marshal Vorak, your forces will proceed to the designated coordinates. Any deviation from the route will be treated as an act of aggression." Vorak responded with a terse, "Acknowledged." The Dominion soldiers began boarding in silence, their heads lowered as they moved past the human troops. The air felt heavy with the unspoken weight of defeat, but no shots were fired. The war was over, and both sides knew it. As the last transport sealed its hatch, Vorak turned to Varn. "Ensure the convoy stays together. I won't tolerate disorder." "Yes, sir." Vorak lingered on the platform as the transport slowly lifted, joining the escort in the sky. He stepped back, watching as the fleet ascended, passing through the containment field one vessel at a time. The shimmering barrier flickered, then faded entirely as the last transport cleared orbit. From the bridge of his own ship, Vorak observed Orion 7 growing smaller in the viewport, its surface scarred but unconquered. Human ships trailed them at a distance, following until the Dominion vessels reached the outer edges of the system. Only once the convoy crossed into unclaimed space did the human escort break off, turning back toward Orion 7. Vorak watched them disappear, their forms swallowed by the distant light of the colony's star. Varn stepped beside him, his voice subdued. "It's done." Vorak didn't respond. His eyes lingered on the empty expanse ahead, knowing that the scars of Orion 7 would follow them long after the stars had faded from view. Hey there again. I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.